Hey, what's up, folks? How you doing? It's a beautiful and slow Sunday. So I put out a question on my Facebook, my X, and my WhatsApp. It's not really a question. It's more like a statement. I was saying, ask me anything you would like me to answer on my channel. If the questions exceed 5, I will do a video response answering each question. So far, I have only received about 11 questions. So they've exceeded 5. And I thought some are very good questions that warrant some airtime, and very good responses. So since some of the questions are a bit like crazy and cringe, I opted to keep the question as anonymous. You will know yourselves as you're watching the video. Because if I tag names to these questions, some of you will embarrass yourselves. And I decided to rank the questions from the most important to the least important. So the last question I tackled just now is one of the least important questions. Okay, so let's get into it. What's the first question? Where's that? This guy says, so I'm doing a research on why the average person and society at large is usually utilitarian by default. I wonder what you think about that, or is my premise even substantial? That's a very good question. I think amongst the questions I've gotten, I felt like it's right. It's only right to rank this question as the first question on the questions I've gotten. And the reason why that's the case is because I too have thought about this. I think not really thought about it in a deep sense, but through my interactions with people when we're talking about morality and having discussions about questions that border on right and wrong, people are usually utilitarian by default. It's almost as if that's the intrinsic approach for the average thinking person. So maybe to get into answering the question, I would just like to say, first of all, that moral debates as well as moral philosophical discussions are very loaded and very complicated. I think debates about morality are the most annoying debates, especially if you're out to try to argue for this sort of like objective structure underpinning the whole of like the human experience. It's usually a very frustrating enterprise and a humbling one as well. So in answering the question, I think let me start on first maybe giving a few vital definitions and a few points that underlie what a utilitarian approach to morality is all about. Allow me to use a quote from one of the champions that have spoken and written at length about a utilitarian approach to morality, which is Jeremy Bentham. He said something like, it is the greatest happiness of the greatest number that is the measure of right and wrong. So already you get the idea, the underlying idea that the kind of lays out the foundation for utilitarianism is basically something is right if it benefits the greater good. If it's for the greater good, or if it benefits a huge number of people, that is where we can derive a sense of right. So there are core concepts that underlie this basic approach to morality, which is consequentialism, the idea that a right action is determined by the benefits that we attain from the consequences that follow that action. And then another core principle of utilitarianism could be something like a basic hedonism. And this is the idea that pleasure and pain are the only things that are of intrinsic value. So we should try our best to gravitate towards an outcome that results into more pleasure as opposed to an outcome that is resulting in suffering and pain. And I've already laid out for you one of the key thinkers who tried to champion this perspective of morality, which is Jeremy Bentham, and another one is John Stuart Mill, who tried to at least build from where Bentham had left and try to highlight the importance of the individual in this case, as opposed to just looking at this in aggregate numbers. So now answering the question, you even asked, is my premise even substantial? I feel like it is. I feel like that's a very interesting research point for a number of reasons. which I don't want to get sidelined here. So let me just answer the question. The reason why people are utilitarian by default, in my perspective, people have this intrinsic sense of justice in them, People have a sense of fairness that is almost imbued. To use the word imbue is to assume a lot of things I can't even argue for, but just for the ease of language, people have this sense like everything should be just. Let's benefit as much people as we can. That's why people are more prone to donating to a cause that they know will benefit a large number of people as opposed to just individuals. And people are more given to the idea that we should be in a position where we serve and protect a huge number of people because it's the majority that counts. It's the numbers that count. So they measure worth and what a right action is based on the level of benefits that they attain from it, as well as how it encompasses a huge number of people, or how it's of benefit to like a huge number of people. And I feel that's the default. That's why people come to this idea, because they have that psychological sense of right action, of a right action, and what's just. That's why when you run people through different trolley problems, most people would answer, I'd rather we kill one person and save 5, as opposed to killing 5 and saving 1 person. It just feels intuitively right. So I feel utilitarianism today, despite its flaws and limitations, and despite it getting this barrage of criticism, is still one of the most influential moral theories because of how it just neatly marries with basic human intuitions. So yeah, I think I hope I've answered your question at least to some degree, but I'm glossing over the facts. When you do your research, I would like us to have a conversation on that question on this channel. Or if you want, we could actually even just do a segment where we talk about that. That's a brilliant question. I doubt if this question should even be ranked as the second highest question or the second question with some level of significance, but anyway, we'll give it number 2. So this girl asks, have you ever considered the fact that you doubt that God is real is because of some form of childhood trauma or anger towards God for something or someone you lost? Just asking. So, a lot of people in this country are Christians. That's the only worldview they know. And so by default, no, in fact, let me put it this way. A lot of people in this country are Christians, and they're in this mental state where this is all that they know, and they're so absolutely sure about their beliefs, and they've never come across a thought that they truly entertained questioning the existence of the God that they believe in. So when they come across somebody who expresses belief or skepticism towards that God, their default is not really to appreciate the arguments that the person brings to the table or the reasons why the person themselves says led to their disbelief or their skepticism in God. But they want to have a reason that speaks towards their own biases, a reason that feeds into the stereotype they have in their head. This person questions God because they lost a loved one, and now they're angry with God. This person questions God because they passed through a very hard time, and because of that hard time, it challenged their faith and shook their faith. But they don't get to, in their thinking, they don't get to the idea that actually maybe this person has well thought out intellectual reasons why they're just not convinced in a supernatural power. They just never bring themselves to think in those lines, because in their heads, it's almost impossible to believe that a God exists. It's like, it's a nonsensical idea, like it's self-proving. Like, look at this, man. Look at the world. Look at my experience. I just can't see myself in a world where I'm supposing that there is no God, It's impossible to even entertain the idea. So by default, when they come across you who's skeptical about God's existence, your issue is childhood trauma, my guy, or you lost somebody, or you're upset with God, not that there isn't God, you know what I mean? So that's what this question is kind of like really getting at. But in answering your question, I have thought about that, and it's not really childhood trauma. I had a very nice upbringing. My parents were both religious, and I don't think I was abused in any sense. And neither did my skepticism towards religion and the existence of God come about because of trauma or because I was disappointed or because I lost anybody. My skepticism towards God started basically through just understanding the theory of evolution by natural selection, which cast doubt on the brand of Christianity I was coming from, which was the Jehovah's Witness organization. And from there, everything started crumbling because I doubted one central idea, which I actually believed in, which is creation by design. So when that happened, it kind of casted doubt on everything else. Then that opened my mind to try to read a bit further and try to take more nuanced and different perspectives from what I had held on to for a very long time. So yeah, it's not trauma, neither is it depression. It's actually well thought out intellectual arguments. If you could only visit my Substack and my YouTube, you could see all this stuff. What's your beef with God, my guy? Most of you people do not engage with my content, do not engage with my stuff, you don't watch my channel, you don't read my Substack. All you do is watch my WhatsApp statuses. You watch the memes I share, the jokes I put out there, the poking holes to religion and stuff like that. And through that, you think you have a rounded up idea of what I generally think about God, which is like this shallow, upset, smug little atheist guy who's upset and angry with God, and there's a beef between me and God. But that's not the case. There's actually no beef between me and your idea of a God. You know, if only you could just engage with my content directly and go read my stuff, watch my videos, you'd find out that these are well thought out arguments, and I'm not just out here trying to be a dick or trying to be in your face. These are things I think about every single day of my life. So there's no any beef. All you have to do is just read my work, watch my stuff, and not think you have me figured out simply by looking at memes that I share on WhatsApp. Among all brands of Christianity, what religion within Christianity do you think is the closest to what you can call true religion? Okay, so without a doubt, it has to be Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, I'm not speaking because I have a background as a Jehovah's Witness or because I'm somewhat biased towards Jehovah's Witnesses, but I feel like Jehovah's Witnesses have a certain level of intellectual honesty towards their approach to religion, because here's a brand of Christians that try to do everything that the Bible says. These guys literally pick the Bible apart. When I was a Jehovah's Witness, we had segments of Christian meetings that were entirely dedicated, not even segments, everything was entirely dedicated on the Bible. It wasn't just cherry-picked verses and then you argue for like some idea that you want confirmed by those verses. It was like really deep peering into the Bible. You had a portion of people who would read a portion of the Bible assigned to you. And by the way, every single year, Jehovah's Witnesses read the entire Bible. Every single year. So you start from Genesis, going all the way down. I don't know if they do that now. They even encourage you to do that. They encourage you to have set goals on how you're going to be approaching your Bible reading and stuff like that. And when it comes to core beliefs, I feel like Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs align more to the biblical narrative compared to any religion or any church whatsoever. Because when it comes to topics like the Trinity, the soul, and hell, and heaven, Jehovah's Witnesses are like on strong footing in some sort of like rational manner. You know, it's almost nonsensical to watch other brands of Christianity believing things like the Trinity, hellfire, you have an eternal soul, when the Bible clearly seems to be saying otherwise. And Jehovah's Witnesses seem to have a more objective lens through which they see these things. So definitely Jehovah's Witnesses. In my light, they're the closest to a version of Christianity we could deem true. What's your take on Alex and Destiny's first conversation on morality? basically, what I think about that conversation is that was a beautiful conversation, first of all. And it was great to see Alex trying to help Destiny not take advantage of some of these moral statements that he was just airing out without substantiating them in any sense, you know. And I felt like the frustration that Destiny had in that conversation was more centered around trying to get to some sort of like objective measure and line for what could determine what a right action is and what a wrong action is. And from the looks of things, he felt as if Alex was simply just overgeneralizing and skeptical about everything without giving some sort of solid moral framework to work with, you know. And I definitely understand that. Then he reached the point where he asked Alex, okay, then since you've shut down everything and every moral system I've tried to argue for, what's your take? How do you come down on this conversation? How do we determine wrong and right? What do you say? Then Alex basically just talked about his approach towards emotivism and how he feels that moral statements are simply statements about feelings and not objective truths. But even from feelings, we can build something solid that we can work with. But overall, that was like a great conversation. No God. So this person asks, no God. This doesn't even sound like a question. No God, no meaning, no purpose. So what are you living for? Let me guess. Basic hedonism and your next big smash. God damn. Okay. I know you people think just because you profess belief in a God, you have some sort of like objective transcendent purpose that all of us can only dream to admire, you know, something that we can just dream about in our wildest dreams, you know. You guys have it all figured out. You have mounted your reality into something objective. You have a goal, you have a purpose, you have something your life is aligned towards, that you're living towards. And as people who are skeptical about religion and God, we simply are confused and we're living for basic wins. And I like how he put it, basic hedonism. Basically, what he's trying to say with this hedonism point is, my life just oscillates between pleasure and pain, and all I'm trying to do is just maximize the pleasure, enjoy my life, you know, material things, this base stuff that don't even give you any meaning of sorts, because I scraped off my foundation. Personally, I don't attain meaning from just the idea that I have a higher power supervising me and looking after me. I think I attain meaning from the very complexity of the human experience, trying to figure out why we're here, why we exist, trying to be in some kind of pursuit for a more clarified knowledge. Why is there anything rather than nothing? You know, why is this world the way it is? What happens to us? What's the primary reason we're here for? Just that the pursuit of knowledge and trying to figure out the human experience in the most reasonable manner. I attain a lot of reason. I attain a lot of purpose and meaning from that. And I also attain purpose and meaning from the valuable relationships I have with my family, my friends, the people that I deem special to me, you know, and the books I read, the knowledge I gather. All that just kind of speaks into what strikes me as a purposeful life to live. And if I'm able to meet my goals, my targets, that strikes me as a very meaningful life. Don't know what you think about that, but I hope I've answered your question. If you were given a huge sum of US or Swiss funding, what would you do with your science things? Okay, I think I would find a way to give back to society. I've always wanted to do that with Literary Express Zambia. The point was I wanted to go out there, just inspire people to talk, to read, to write, to speak, and to simply not be ashamed to raise the most important questions that they think about in the secrecy of their minds. I wanted to go out there and champion intellectual pursuits and academic pursuits. I wanted to do that with Literary Express Zambia. So if I had such huge funding, I would do that. And I would also get into this thing where I teach STEM fields to disadvantaged schools. Just go out there, inspire these kids, show them that you could actually have a fulfilling career in engineering, in math, in science, and show them that the world is bigger than you think, you know. I would heavily do that. I'll be big on that. Yeah. And create some kind of institute that could, you know, carry that idea and that vision. Among the 4 famous atheists, I call them the Fantastic Four: Richard, Sam, Hitchens, and Daniel. Who remains your favorite? It's a no-brainer, man. It's a no-brainer. Christopher Hitchens, Lord Hitchens. And that's because Hitchens was somebody that spoke to my base intuitions, somebody who brought out something I wished I could say to authority and to religion. I feel like Hitchens was a rhetorical genius. Hitchens was somebody that was just like pleasurable to listen to. You could listen to him talk, even though you don't agree with him. It was just amazing to listen to Christopher Hitchens talk. I know a lot of academics, philosophers who are well thought, and atheists who are more in line, and atheists who are more admirable to follow and read, have heavily criticized Christopher Hitchens, almost beating him into submission. But I feel in many ways, more than one, Christopher was an atheist for his time. While he was alive, he was an atheist for his time. And he achieved his purpose. And even though he's received a lot of like criticism saying his arguments were not philosophically sound or philosophical at all, there was really, really surface water arguments, I feel like Christopher was a guy for his time. He achieved his purpose and he exposed a lot of what Christians take for granted, a lot of what these fundamentalist believers take for granted. Christopher simply exposed the ghost. He was like, there's a bug here. This is not a feature, it's a bug. We got to think about it. So yeah, definitely it has to be Hitchens. You seem like you don't believe in anything, man. Free will, there is no. God, there is no. Sin, there is no. How about the soul? Okay, this question sounds funny. I shouldn't have ranked it at the base below. Should have been somewhere in the front there with... In fact, this question should have taken the space where I was talking about what your beef with God. Okay, I haven't really read around the soul too much, but I'm skeptical. That's what I can say. I'm really skeptical of both the Platonic idea of what a soul is, even from classical Greek ideas of what the soul is. I'm just a bit skeptical, you know. Yeah, I know that's a fascinating idea for basic dualists, but I don't know. I think it's something I should perhaps read around, but I don't think we have souls. I feel like everything is simply reducible to the brain. Yeah, that's complicated. I don't want to get into questions about consciousness. I'm talking about phenomenal consciousness. Yeah, that's a question for another day, but I'm skeptical about the soul. A short answer is no, I don't believe we have souls. Black Pope or white Pope? This question definitely is going at the base of the most important questions. Quite frankly, I don't care, man. I don't care. I really, really don't care. You can get a pink Pope for I care. Would you marry a devout Christian babe? It depends with what you mean by devout or what that devout is about, you know. But Perhaps, yeah. I mean, we're in Zambia, man. You only get Christian babes. Get Christian babes and nothing. There's only a select few. So we work with what we have. The last question goes to this nonsensical question. This is the least important question amongst all the questions. I said I would rank them according to importance. So the last question, I wish I could expose the person who wrote this question. When I saw this question, this is a question that made me feel like, for the sake of uniformity, I'll keep everyone anonymous, because if I put name tags on everyone and not name tag this question, it will be unfair, So for the sake of equal and fair play, I decided to keep all of your names private. So this person asks, what's your body count this year alone? That's not even how he asked the question. It's like, what's your body count this year alone, MF? You all know what that means. Well, let's just say this question is for another day. This question is not a question to answer on television. We just leave it in the Lord's hands, baby. In the Lord's hands. Until next time, it was a pleasure receiving these questions. And tell you what, the best questions I've got, you should upvote the questions. I'll list them out the way they are. And the question that gets more votes, I'll invite the person who asked the question so we have a conversation. All right.